the sling of David, the hair of Samson, the lion of Israel. The Lavi was to be the tip of the spear of the Israeli Air Force. Made as a multi-purpose fighter with excellent maneuverability, it was destined to deal with any threat of the era and to ensure the supremacy of the Israeli Air Force in the Levant. However, politics, money and betrayal kept this lion in a cage. And today we're going to find out just why. Welcome to the story of the prospective Israeli jet fighter, the young lion, IAI Lavi. There is no topic more controversial, nor a region on Earth more steeped in history than this area of the Middle East, and the story of how a small nation had the ambition to build a fighter is no exception. Israel in the late 1970s found itself beset by rivals on all sides, as well as severe internal division. For the Israeli Air Force, it was time to upgrade their aging fleet of multi-role fighter bombers, such as the Douglas A-4 Skyhawk and the IAI Kafir. The Israeli Air Force was estimated to have a requirement for 300 aircraft, 60 of which were expected to be combat-capable two-seater trainers. They wanted to have two tiers of aircraft, a small number of high-performance aircraft, and a larger bulk of less sophisticated planes that could be used for various bulk missions. The government was keen to look at American aircraft such as the F-16, but some voices commended that perhaps instead of spending money overseas, they spend it right here. And it was a popular choice among politicians too, as it was seen as an important program to modernize Israel's industry overall and increase its technical ability, helping the nation progress towards becoming a developed nation. But for such a country to tackle an advanced project such as a multi-role fighter bomber, it was certainly ambitious. And it gets worse when you consider that this aircraft would not only have to face down the most advanced Soviet jets being sold to rivals, but American too, because at the time, Egypt and Saudi Arabia both had made steps to acquire modern American fighter jets, and the idea that they might be turned on Israel wasn't outside the realm of possibility. In February of 1980, the project was given the go-ahead and the Air Force presented its requirements to the Israeli Aircraft Industries, or IAI. This future jet would need to be able to perform primary air-to-ground strikes, but also face multiple air targets at once. As such, it would also need to be quick and survivable, with plenty of redundancy, and be much more maneuverable than rival aircraft. Lastly, it would need to be cheaper than buying American-made aircraft and have a life cycle cost that made sense for the smaller procurement. To save on resources and to take advantage of existing partnerships, the government planned to produce a variant of a Pratt & Whitney engine for the new fighter. It would be built domestically at their local engine plant, but many of the components would have to be designed and developed in the United States, as their production methods were a state secret. So already the supply chain had a weakness of involving too much American help. But I'm getting ahead of myself. With the green light and a deadline of 6 years, the team got to work. And this is what they came up with. The story of the Lavi is truly fascinating, but I've also found it fascinating to follow the journey of other jet fighters around the world and see where they actually end up being used. Something that the US military obviously needed help with when they were asking the public for assistance with finding the lost stealth fighter jet. This story was such a kerfuffle around the world that it was actually broadcast by many different media outlets that range from the left to the right, with the majority being in the center. This, of course, is a far cry from the current situation in Israel, which has a much more biased around its media. When researching for Found and Explained, we always like to have a look at the bias distribution chart, which shows us which news outlets are covering which story and where they lean politically. It's an important factor to note that when looking through a story like the missing jet fighter or something to do with Israel, to see how credible your source is. And that's why ground news is such an essential tool for us. It scores the reporting practices of news publications based on an average rating of 3 rating systems: ownership, factuality, and bias, which ends up giving you a final score that tells you just how much you can trust this media. Avoid misleading media narratives and stay informed on breaking news by using my link, ground.news/found, which you can see down in my description, and you'll get 30% off your Vantage plan. Support my channel by supporting Ground News, and a warm hug to those that take the time to check out the amazing work that they're doing. By 1986, 2 of the 5 prototypes had been completed successfully by the Israeli aircraft industry. It had a delta wing, which the company was already familiar with through their earlier work on the Kafir, which paired with large steerable canards situated forward of the wing. The delta wing arrangement was relatively low weight and provided space for considerable fuel capacity, a smooth low-altitude flight experience, and high levels of directional stability whilst flown at high angles of attack. With a single seat, a single engine, the Lavi's empty weight was around 1,300 kilograms lighter than its counterpart and benchmark, the F-16. This allowed it to be significantly more maneuverable and reach a top speed of Mach 1.85. All while carrying 750-pound bombs, the Lavi possessed a combat radius of 250 nautical miles, or an alternative armament of 2,000-pound bombs enabled a 650 nautical mile combat radius for those bigger missions. Possessing a 1.1:1 thrust-to-weight ratio while equipped with this combat payload, the airframe of the Lavi was designed to be capable of routinely withstanding up to 9 Gs. Impressive. But much of the innovation was also on the software front. Because it was an aerodynamically unstable airframe, the plane employed a quadruplex redundant digital fly-by-wire system in order to provide stability and control, something that at the time was considered overkill, but today seen almost everywhere with delta wing aircraft. In fact, it's these fully digital controls that made the Lavi more computerized than any other system in the world. Included in its avionics were advanced countermeasures and a powerful Doppler multi-mode radar built locally that included high-resolution mappings, terrain avoidance, and a look-down bombing functionality. This was all very high-tech for the 80s. On New Year's Eve of 1986, the inaugural prototype embarked on its maiden flight. But anyway, he was the head of the IAI's Air Operational Sections, managed to fly the aircraft in the skies for 26 minutes. During this time, he meticulously evaluated the engine and controls, affirming their performance. The handling of the aircraft was lauded as excellent, demonstrating remarkable stability even in challenging crosswind landings. Approximately 3 years later, the second Lavi prototype gracefully took flight. Distinguished by enhancements and additional features compared to its predecessor, this iteration boasted a belly-mounted fuel tank, a specialized mid-air refueling probe, and several new avionics systems. Both the B-01 and B-02, the names of the prototypes, were configured as tandem two-seaters, with a rear cockpit dedicated to housing testing equipment, but would be replaced in future with test pilots. A noteworthy total of 82 sorties had been completed between the two finalized prototypes. These flights systematically explored a significant portion of the aircraft's flight envelope, contributing valuable data to understanding its capabilities. The jets were passing all the tests with flying colors, and it was time to talk production. Talks that didn't go the way anyone expected. Something that you need to understand about Israel in the 1980s was, despite only having around 4 million people, 24% of its budget, reportedly, went to the military. And fighter jets aren't cheap. The Lavi's development entailed the abandonment of other competing military requirements and sought after investments. Consequently, different factions formed within the armed forces that did not endorse the project. They each wanted funding for themselves. Some of the officers contended that the F-16, with comparable performance to the Lavi, was already readily available and moreover, the more cost-effective to procure. In fact, a top Israeli general in the Air Force argued in favor of cancelling the Lavi project and instead acquiring 75 F-16s. And let's just talk about the American influence here. Despite garnering unwavering support from the Israeli Air Force, the Lavi did face significant international opposition. Despite the critical role played by the US as a partner in the aircraft's development, remember those engines? Political resistance to the funding of the Lavi was evident. This was fueled by concerns that the Lavi could become a strong competitor to the export market against the American aircraft like the F-16C and the F-18 Hornet. And you know Uncle Sam, ever patient with his friend Israel, wasn't happy. The supporters were emphasizing the economic benefits of having a homegrown jet and were optimistic about the Lavi's sales potential. The IAI projected ambitious export sales envision up to 407 units sold to various countries, including South Africa, Chile, Taiwan, and Argentina. Early in the Lavi's development, there were indications of a significant South African interest and involvement. However, in later stages, Israel committed to the US that the Lavi would not be offered for export, underlining its strategic considerations and international commitments. So already the Lavi was starting to not make sense with international sales out. In a last-ditch effort, supporters asserted that the Lavi was a prestigious program, showcasing Israel's technological prowess and contributing to the nation's economical advantage. They argued that abandoning the development could result in substantial job losses and potentially lead to emigration, with top engineers and scientists leaving to go build American aircraft. While the Israeli state controller downplayed the impact on unemployment, they were more worried about that bottom line. On August 30th, 1987, Israel's cabinet engaged in a pivotal role to determine the fate of the Lavi's development. This decision-making process was significantly influenced by substantial lobbying efforts from the United States, accompanied by several compensatory proposals aimed at securing the cancellation of the project. The vote unfolded amidst tense political polarization, with the Israeli Labour Party instructing its members to vote against the continuation of the Lavi. The cabinet ultimately rejected the project's continuation by a very narrow margin of 12 to 11, with one cabinet member opting to abstain. Subsequently, the Israeli government greenlit the acquisition of 90 F-16Cs from the United States, serving as an effective replacement for the Lavi. The two prototypes were put to work doing additional system tests, and IAI would actually complete a third test bed for the radar and other components, but eventually all three prototypes were retired. But interestingly, reports circulated that China and South Africa expressed interest in pursuing the ongoing development of the Lavi, hinting at potential international collaboration, despite its cancellation in Israel. And let's talk about that so-called, air quotes, collaboration. In 1988, Israel's defense minister refuted a Sunday Times of London report suggesting an agreement between Israel and China to develop a fighter derived from the Lavi, a project that was initially rooted in the F-16. Apparently, detailed development design documentation of the Lavi was handed over to China to help them develop their next generation aircraft, the J-10. And funny, this story might have just ended there as a rumor, if not for a third party agreeing to it. Russia. That's right, in 2006, Russian engineers speculated that the J-10 bore resemblance to the Lavi, describing it as more or less a version with a blend of foreign technology and design methods acquired from various sources. And then another publication in 2008 ascertained that the J-10 benefited from technical information from the original Israeli project, citing senior Russian engineers who claimed to have heard this from their Chinese counterparts. All very fishy, but what do the Chinese say? The Chinese, of course, absolutely deny this. They contend that the J-10's features attributed to the Lavi are the result of their own prior aircraft design. They point to the Chengdu's earlier work on the cancelled J-9 from the 1960s and 70s as the source of the J-10's Lavi-like double canard configuration, which was all a decade before Israelis even built their jet. But I'll leave that up to you in the comments to decide whether or not that's the case. Despite the cancellation, the Lavi project left a lasting impact. Technical knowledge for its development contributed to Israel's space achievements and the growth of its high-tech industry. The radar that was developed for the Lavi became a commercial success, and many have also said that this project led to Israel's high-tech boom of the 1990s, because 5,000 Israeli scientists and engineers who had been employed on the project were now released to join the local economy. The IAI Lavi, although short-lived, remains a fascinating chapter in aviation history. Its cancellation stirred debates, but its technological legacy endured, contributing to Israel's aerospace achievements. This topic is no doubt controversial, and its timing is something that is unfortunate, but all I ask is you keep in mind the love for aircraft is universal, and despite this all being developed as a weapon for war, we know the engineers built it with their hearts and soul to just try and create an impressive machine. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for more content. Until then, fly high and stay curious. Thanks for watching.